Now let's begin. Gordon Metcalf had learned to read silence the way other men read newspapers. After 12 years working crisis intervention for the State Department, negotiating with warlords and cartel bosses in places most Americans couldn't find on a map, he developed an instinct for when things were about to go catastrophically wrong. That instinct was screaming at him now as he sat in his Baltimore office, staring at his phone. The call had come 20 minutes ago. Johns Hopkins Hospital. His son, 7-year-old Tommy, was in emergency surgery. The nurse's voice had been professionally calm, but Gordon heard the tremor underneath. Intestinal obstruction. Foreign objects. Multiple coins. We need you here immediately. He'd tried Shannon's cell 4 times. Straight to voicemail. Her mother Marie's number. The same. His jaw tightened as he grabbed his jacket and headed for the parking garage. Shannon had been different lately, distant in a way that went beyond their recent arguments. And her mother had been spending more time at their Towson home, her presence filling rooms with a quiet toxicity that Gordon had tried to ignore for the sake of peace. The drive to Hopkins should have taken 30 minutes. Gordon made it in 18, his mind cataloging possibilities. Tommy was a careful kid, almost obsessively so, a trait he'd inherited from Gordon's late father, a methodical man who'd taught his grandson to think before acting. The idea of him swallowing coins, especially 23 of them according to the nurse, made no sense. He found Shannon in the surgical waiting room, her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. Marie sat beside her, one arm around her daughter, the other hand clutching a rosary. When Marie looked up and saw Gordon, something flickered across her face, something that looked almost like satisfaction before her expression shifted to practiced grief. "Where were you?" Shannon's voice cracked as she stood. Her eyes were red, but Gordon noticed they were dry. "They called you an hour ago." 20 minutes, Gordon corrected, his voice level. "What happened, Shannon?" She choked on the words, her mother's hand squeezing her shoulder. "He was playing in his room. When I checked on him, he was choking. I called 911 immediately." Gordon studied his wife's face, seeing the micro-expressions he'd been trained to read. The slight pursing of her lips before she spoke. The way her eyes shifted left. She was lying, but about what? He couldn't yet determine. "I need to see him," Gordon said. "He's in surgery," Marie interjected, her voice carrying that familiar condescension she reserved for Gordon. "They won't let you in. We just have to wait and pray." She lifted the rosary pointedly. Gordon ignored her and approached the surgical desk. The nurse recognized him immediately. He'd negotiated a hostage situation here 2 years ago when a patient's family member had taken a doctor at gunpoint. The nurse's professional mask slipped for just a moment, and Gordon saw genuine concern. "Mr. Metcalf, Tommy's stable, but Dr. Reeves wants to speak with you immediately after the procedure. It's unusual." 2 hours later, Dr. Reeves, a seasoned pediatric surgeon with salt and pepper hair and the steady hands of a master craftsman, pulled Gordon into a consultation room. Shannon tried to follow, but the doctor's firm look stopped her at the door. 23 coins, Dr. Reeves said without preamble, setting a steel tray on the table between them. Quarters, dimes, and nickels gleamed under the fluorescent lights, cleaned of biological matter, but still bearing the marks of stomach acid. "Your son's esophagus shows bruising consistent with forced insertion. This wasn't accidental, Mr. Metcalf. This was assault." Gordon's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained controlled. "What else?" When Tommy woke up briefly before we sedated him for surgery, he was trying to tell the nurses something. He was agitated, panicked. He kept saying grandma and more. We thought it was delirium. The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've been a mandated reporter for 30 years. I've seen things that would turn your stomach. But I've never seen a child that terrified of someone who should protect them. I want to see him the moment he's out of recovery." "Of course. But Mr. Metcalf, I have to file a report with Child Protective Services and the police. It's protocol." "Do it," Gordon said. "Do it now." When he returned to the waiting room, Shannon and Marie were gone. The nurse pointed toward the cafeteria, but Gordon's instinct told him something different. He took the stairs to Tommy's assigned recovery room and posted himself outside, checking his phone. Still nothing from Shannon. 45 minutes later, a recovery nurse wheeled Tommy out. The boy's face was pale and trailing from his small arm, but his eyes found Gordon immediately. Relief flooded through those eyes. followed quickly by something that made Gordon's blood freeze: fear. "Dad." Tommy's voice was barely a whisper, raw from the trauma to his throat. Gordon gripped his son's hand carefully, aware of the four. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Tommy's other hand moved weakly, pointing to his hospital gown. Gordon looked down and saw it. Crude letters scratched into the fabric with what looked like a pen, the writing shaky but deliberate. "Grandma shoved them down my throat." "Mom watched. Said swallow, or ill add more." The world seemed to tilt. Gordon's training kicked in, the same cold clarity that had kept him alive in Caracas, in Mogadishu, in a dozen other places where death had whispered in his ear. He pulled out his phone and photographed the message, then looked at Tommy. "You're safe now," Gordon said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "I promise you, Tommy. You're safe, and this will never happen again." Tommy's eyes welled with tears. "She said if I told, she'd make you go away forever. Mom said you'd believe them, not me. Listen to me." Gordon leaned close, his hand gentle on Tommy's cheek. "I will always believe you, and no one is taking me anywhere. Do you understand?" A nurse approached, reading the chart. "We're moving Tommy to pediatric intensive care for observation. Are you the father?" "I am." "Mom's in the administrator's office," the nurse said quietly, her eyes flicking to Tommy's gown. "She's asking about procedures for filing reports." Kept mentioning domestic incidents and safety concerns. Gordon's mind raced through scenarios. Shannon was getting ahead of the story, controlling the narrative. It was exactly the kind of preemptive strike Marie would orchestrate. She'd been a trial attorney before retiring, her courtroom tactics legendary for their ruthlessness. She would have coached Shannon on exactly what to say, how to position Gordon as the aggressor. "I need to make a call," Gordon said to the nurse. "Don't let anyone except medical staff near my son. No one. Is that clear?" The nurse looked at Tommy's gown, at the scratched message, and nodded. "Security's already been notified about potential parental conflict. Standard protocol." Gordon stepped into the hallway and dialed a number he hadn't called in 3 years. Raphael Chambers, Baltimore's chief of police, answered on the second ring. "Gordon Metcalf. It's been a while. Raphael, I need you to know something before anyone else reaches you. My son was assaulted. He's in Hopkins. Evidence suggests my wife and mother-in-law were involved. Shannon may try to file a false report against me." There was a pause. "Gordon, that's a serious allegation." "I know. I'm heading to your station now to file my own report, with photographic evidence and medical documentation. I wanted you to hear it from me first, as a courtesy. Come straight here. I'll be waiting." But when Gordon arrived at the Central District Station 40 minutes later, he knew immediately he'd been outmaneuvered. 2 uniformed officers stood by the entrance, their postures alert. Inside, he could see Shannon in an interview room, Marie beside her, both talking to a detective Gordon didn't recognize. He approached the desk sergeant, a veteran named Dale Moody he'd worked with on the hostage situation. Moody's expression was carefully neutral. "Gordon, I need you to wait here." "What's going on, Dale?" "Your wife filed a report 30 minutes ago. Says you assaulted your son, forced him to swallow coins as punishment for talking back. She's got her mother as a witness." Gordon felt the trap closing, but his voice remained steady. "Where's Chief Chambers?" "In with them now." He wanted. Moody stopped as the interview room door opened. Raphael Chambers stepped out, 6'2" of controlled authority in a perfectly pressed uniform. He was a year younger than Gordon, but they'd been through something together that aged men beyond years. 3 years ago, Gordon had talked down a suicide bomber who'd taken Chambers' teenage daughter hostage during a school threat. Gordon had spent 7 hours in that classroom, building rapport with a broken man who'd lost everything, until finally the man had surrendered and Chambers' daughter had walked out unharmed. Chambers' eyes found Gordon, and something passed between them: recognition, trust, and calculation. Then Chambers turned to Shannon and Marie, who'd followed him out of the interview room. "Mrs. Metcalf," Chambers said, his voice carrying through the station, "you've made a grave mistake." Shannon's face went white. Marie stepped forward, her attorney instincts kicking in. "Chief, my daughter is the victim here. Her son, your grandson," Chambers interrupted, wrote a message on his hospital gown. Hopkins photographed it before they changed him. Gordon had already sent me the image before he arrived, along with the surgeon's report documenting forced insertion of foreign objects. He looked at Gordon. Forensics is headed to Hopkins now to collect the physical evidence and interview the medical staff. This is ridiculous, Marie snapped. That message could have been written by anyone. Gordon could have coerced. The boy wrote it in recovery, immediately after surgery, with medical staff present. The handwriting matches samples from his school, and the timeline of Gordon's movements today puts him across town when the incident occurred. Chambers' voice dropped to ice. What you two have attempted here isn't just false reporting. It's obstruction, witness tampering, and attempted evidence manipulation. And that's before we get into what actually happened to that child. Shannon began to cry, but Gordon noticed it was different from her earlier tears. These were genuine, born of fear rather than performance. Marie, however, remained composed, her legal mind already calculating angles. We want our lawyer, Marie said. That's your right, Chambers replied. But understand this, that little boy is under police protection as of now, along with full CPS monitoring. Gordon, you'll need to come downtown for a formal statement, but you're free to return to the hospital first. As officers moved to separate Shannon and Marie, taking them to different interview rooms, Shannon's eyes found Gordon. For just a moment, he saw the woman he'd married 8 years ago, before Marie's influence had poisoned everything. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but her mother's sharp look silenced her. Gordon turned and walked out into the Baltimore night, his phone already dialing the hospital to check on Tommy. The game had just begun, but this time, he would ensure he wasn't the only one who knew the rules. The hospital's pediatric ICU had a strange quiet to it, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft footsteps of nurses moving between rooms. Gordon had been sitting beside Tommy's bed for 3 hours now, watching his son sleep under sedation, the 4 drips keeping him stable while his small body healed from trauma that should never have happened. Dr. Reeves had pulled him aside an hour ago with a fuller picture. The coins were inserted methodically, she'd explained, her voice clinical, but her eyes betrayed fury. Based on the esophageal bruising pattern, someone held them down and forced them in one at a time. The psychological trauma from something like that. She'd trailed off. I've called in Dr. Angie McCarthy, one of our best child psychologists. Tommy will need extensive therapy. Now, watching his son's chest rise and fall, Gordon let himself feel the full weight of rage he'd been suppressing. Not the hot, explosive kind that led to mistakes. The cold, calculating fury that had made him one of the State Department's most effective negotiators. Because negotiation, at its core, was about understanding leverage, motivation, and how to make people believe they had choices when the outcome was already determined. His phone buzzed. A text from Raphael Chambers. Initial interviews done. You need to see this. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Gordon typed back, I'll be there. Another text came through, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Metcalf, this is Brian Nicholson, family law attorney. Chief Chambers suggested I reach out. I handle cases like yours. No charge for initial consultation. Available tomorrow afternoon if you're interested. Gordon saved the number. He'd need legal counsel, though not for the reasons most people would assume. What he was planning would require careful documentation, witnesses, and an understanding of exactly which lines could be crossed and which couldn't. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. A woman in her mid-40s entered, her ID badge identifying her as Dr. Angie McCarthy. She had kind eyes, but the bearing of someone who'd seen humanity at its worst and still chose compassion. Mr. Metcalf? I'm Dr. McCarthy. I wanted to introduce myself before I speak with Tommy tomorrow. Gordon stood, shaking her hand. Call me Gordon. Gordon. Dr. Reeves briefed me on Tommy's physical injuries, and I've read the preliminary police reports. She paused, choosing her words carefully. What was done to your son? It's calculated abuse, not a moment of anger. That kind of deliberate cruelty suggests a pattern. What do you mean? In my experience, people don't wake up one day and decide to torture a child with this level of methodical planning. There's usually a history, escalating behaviors. She glanced at Tommy. When he's ready to talk, I'll need to ask him some difficult questions. About other times he might have been hurt, threatened, or frightened. Gordon felt his stomach turn. You think this has happened before? I think it's possible. The fact that your wife and mother-in-law coordinated a false report so quickly suggests practice, planning. They had a backup strategy ready. Dr. McCarthy's voice softened. I know this is overwhelming. But the more we understand about the full scope of what Tommy's experienced, the better we can help him heal and the stronger your case becomes for his safety. After she left, Gordon pulled out his laptop and began constructing a timeline. When had Shannon changed? When had Marie's visits become more frequent? He opened their joint bank account records, something he rarely checked. Shannon handled most of their finances. What he found made his jaw tighten. Regular cash withdrawals, thousands of dollars over the past 6 months. Payments to a law firm he didn't recognize, Daisy Flowers and Associates. Credit card charges for a storage unit rental in Shannon's name alone. Hotel rooms in Baltimore, dated on nights when Shannon had claimed to be visiting her college friend in Philadelphia. Gordon took screenshots of everything, emailing them to a secure server he maintained for work. Then he dug deeper, accessing Shannon's social media through the family computer. Her privacy settings were tight, but she'd forgotten to log out of her email on their shared iPad. What he found there chilled him more than any hostage situation ever had. An email thread with Marie, dating back 8 months. Asterisk from Marie Gutierrez. Subject, our discussion. Shannon, I've consulted with Daisy. She confirms that Maryland custody laws favor mothers, especially with documented evidence of paternal instability. Gordon's work history, all that travel, the dangerous situations, can be framed as recklessness, abandonment of family. We just need the right incident to document. Be patient. The opportunity will come. Asterisk from Shannon Metcalf. Subject, our discussion. I don't know, Mom. Gordon's never hurt Tommy. He's actually a really good father when he's around. From Marie Gutierrez. Subject, our discussion. That's not the point. The point is securing Tommy's future and your financial security. Gordon's trust fund matures next year, $2.4 million. Under Maryland law, you're entitled to half in a divorce, plus child support and alimony. But only if you're the custodial parent. Only if Gordon is deemed unfit. Think about Tommy's education, his opportunities. Think about your mother, who has sacrificed everything for your happiness. Don't you want to give your son the stability he deserves? Asterisk. The emails continued, growing more detailed, more calculated. Marie had crafted an entire strategy: document Gordon's absences, create a narrative of emotional distance, gather witnesses, Marie's friends from church, and wait for an incident that could be reframed. But the final email, sent just 3 days ago, made Gordon's blood run cold. Asterisk from Marie Gutierrez. Subject, tomorrow. It has to be tomorrow. Tuesday. Gordon will be at that conference in D.C. until evening, confirmed with his assistant. We'll handle the incident in the afternoon, call 911, establish the timeline. Remember your lines. Remember, you came home and found Tommy choking. You called for help immediately. You're the protective mother. I'll back every word. Daisy has the police report template ready. By the time Gordon gets back, the narrative will be set. The authorities will see what we want them to see. A dangerous man who finally went too far. Do not deviate from the plan. Asterisk. Gordon sat back, his hands shaking with fury. But beneath the rage, his mind was already working, cataloging evidence, constructing the counter-narrative, planning moves 3 and 4 steps ahead. Marie had made one critical error. She'd assumed Gordon was just another man she could outmaneuver in court, another opponent who'd play by conventional rules. She'd forgotten that Gordon Metcalf had spent 12 years learning how to dismantle organizations from the inside, how to turn people's own strategies against them, how to make them believe they were winning right up until the moment they realized they'd already lost. He looked at his sleeping son, then back at the screen full of damning evidence. Marie wanted to play games with his family, with his child. He'd show her how the game was really played. But first, he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. Who else was involved? What was the end game beyond money? And most importantly, what had they already done to Tommy that he was too afraid to tell? Gordon forwarded every email to his secure server, then to Raphael Chambers and the attorney, Brian Nicholson. Then he opened a new document and began writing, the same way he'd written briefings in Kabul and Bogota, methodically, comprehensively, with every detail that would be needed to dismantle an enemy completely. Outside Tommy's window, Baltimore's lights glittered in the darkness, indifferent to the war that had just been declared within its borders. But Gordon had learned long ago that the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with information, patience, and the willingness to do whatever it took to protect what mattered most. Gordon arrived at Raphael Chambers' office at 8:45, carrying 2 file folders and a flash drive. He'd left Tommy in the capable hands of a private security firm he'd worked with overseas, 2 former Navy SEALs who owed him favors and understood the assignment wasn't just protection, but witness documentation. Chambers' office was on the 4th floor of Central District Headquarters, a space that balanced institutional functionality with personal touches, citations on the wall, photos of his daughter's graduation, a Bronze Star from his Army days. The chief sat behind his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing documents. "Gordon, coffee." "Black, thanks." Chambers poured from a thermal carafe, then gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Before we get into your materials, you need to see what we've developed." He slid a thick folder across the desk. Shannon Metcalf, née Gutierrez, and Marie Gutierrez. Initial background workup. Gordon opened the folder. The first page was Shannon's interview transcript from yesterday. As he read, a picture emerged of a woman caught between terror and calculation, her answers rehearsed but crumbling under pressure. The detective had been smart, letting Shannon talk herself into contradictions. "Detective, so you said you found Tommy choking at approximately 2:15 p.m.? Shannon, yes. Detective, but the 911 call came in at 2:47 p.m. That's 32 minutes later. Shannon, I was panicking. I tried to help him first, the Heimlich. But, Detective, the Heimlich maneuver for choking? But you said he swallowed the coins, that they were already down. Shannon, I tried to. I don't remember exactly. It was traumatic. Detective, where was your mother during this? Shannon, she arrived after I called 911. Detective, your mother's car was seen on your street security camera at 2:03 p.m. She was there before the incident. More contradictions followed. Shannon claiming Gordon had been violent in the past, but unable to provide any specific incidents. Her mother coaching from beside her, until the detective had separated them. Marie's interview was different, controlled, precise, the performance of a woman who'd spent decades manipulating courtrooms. But even she'd made mistakes. When asked why she'd encouraged Shannon to go to the police before the hospital, before even seeing Tommy, she'd deflected. When pressed about her finances, she'd become defensive. Page 12, Chambers said quietly. Gordon flipped ahead. A financial report on Marie Gutierrez. His eyebrows rose. Marie was broke. Not struggling, not tight on cash, genuinely broke. Her prestigious law career had ended 5 years ago, not in retirement, but in a quiet firing from her firm. Complaints about her ethical standards, questionable billing practices, conflicts of interest. She'd burned through her savings fighting a malpractice lawsuit she'd lost spectacularly. Her house was in foreclosure. Her credit cards were maxed. She was living off Shannon's income and the generosity of a dwindling circle of friends. The trust fund, Gordon said quietly, understanding clicking into place. Your late father's trust fund, which you inherited when he passed 18 months ago. $2.4 million, maturing on your 35th birthday. Chambers tapped the file. Which is next month, January 15th. Gordon had barely thought about the money. His State Department salary was more than adequate, and he'd planned to set most of the trust aside for Tommy's education and future. But to Marie, desperate and drowning, it must have looked like salvation. She needed Shannon to have full custody before the trust matured, Gordon said. Maryland law, the custodial parent controls how marital assets, including inherited funds, are allocated for the child's benefit. Exactly. With you in prison or deemed unfit, Shannon gets custody. Shannon, who's been under Marie's thumb her entire life, would sign whatever her mother put in front of her. Chambers leaned back. Marie wasn't just going after custody. She was going after your entire inheritance through your wife and child. Gordon opened his own folder and slid copies of the emails across the desk. Chambers read in silence, his jaw tightening. This is conspiracy, Chambers said. Fraud, false reporting, child endangerment. And if we can prove Marie forced those coins down Tommy's throat, it's aggravated assault on a minor. Can we prove it? The hospital collected fibers from Tommy's mouth and esophagus during surgery. Preliminary analysis shows cotton consistent with gloves, medical examination gloves. We found a box of them in Marie's car, along with a roll of quarters that matches the denomination of most of the coins removed from Tommy. Gordon's hands clenched. She brought supplies. Premeditation. She planned this attack on your son like a military operation. Chambers stood, pacing. But here's our problem, Gordon. Shannon's attorney. This Daisy Flowers, she's good. Really good. She'll argue Shannon was manipulated, controlled by her mother, that Shannon's a victim too. And honestly, looking at these emails, at Shannon's history, she might be right. Shannon watched my son be tortured and did nothing. I know. And that's a crime. But Marie is the architect here. If we're going to dismantle this completely, we need to prove Marie's pattern of behavior. Show this wasn't isolated. Chambers pulled out another file, which is why I had my people dig into Marie's past. What they'd found was chilling. 3 previous clients of Marie's law firm had filed complaints about her tactics. Witness coaching that crossed into witness tampering, evidence that seemed too perfectly constructed, timelines that didn't quite add up. None of the complaints had gone anywhere. Marie had been too skilled at covering her tracks, and her firm had settled quietly to avoid publicity. But there was one case that stood out. A custody battle 8 years ago, where Marie had represented a mother against a father. The father had lost everything, his kids, his house, his reputation, after being accused of abuse. 2 years later, the eldest child had recanted, admitting their grandmother, the client's mother, who lived with them, had coached them on what to say, even hurt them deliberately to create evidence. By then, the father had committed suicide. The grandmother in that case, Gordon said, reading, Eleanor Gutierrez. Marie's mother, Chambers confirmed. And yes, we're seeing a pattern. The case was sealed because minors were involved, but we've got a court order to access the full records. Gordon set down the file, his mind racing through implications. Marie learned from her mother. This is generational. A strategy passed down, refined, weaponized, which makes her extremely dangerous, but also predictable. Chambers returned to his desk. Gordon, I brought you in here because you're the victim, but also because I know what you're capable of. I've seen you think 10 steps ahead, manipulate situations to achieve objectives. And I need you to understand, this has to be done right. By the book. We can't give Marie or her attorney any ammunition. I understand. Do you? Because the look in your eyes tells me you're already planning something. Chambers leaned forward. Whatever you're thinking, run it by me first. Use me. Use our resources. But don't go rogue, Gordon. That's how we lose. Gordon met his friend's eyes. I'm not interested in losing. Then let me lay out what we're building. Child Protective Services has already filed for emergency custody removal. Hearing is tomorrow morning. Shannon and Marie will both be there. We're recommending Tommy stays in protective custody with you as primary guardian, with supervised visitation only for Shannon pending investigation. CPS will oppose any contact with Marie. Shannon won't fight me for custody. Not once she understands what's really happening. Chambers raised an eyebrow. You sound certain. Because I know my wife better than her mother ever did. Gordon pulled out his phone, opening a photo album. Shannon Gutierrez met me 9 years ago at a veterans charity event. She was volunteering, teaching art therapy to kids of deployed soldiers. She was kind, genuine, passionate about helping children heal from trauma. He scrolled through old photos, Shannon laughing, Shannon with paint on her hands, Shannon crying happy tears at their small wedding. That woman wouldn't torture a child, Gordon continued. She wouldn't watch it happen, but she might freeze, might panic, might be so terrified of her mother that she couldn't act. Marie's controlled Shannon her entire life. Every decision, every choice, filtered through what would mother think. I thought marriage would break that pattern. I was wrong. So what's your play? Gordon smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Shannon thinks she's trapped between her mother and her husband. I'm going to show her there's a third option, the truth. And once she takes it, Marie's entire strategy collapses. And if Shannon doesn't take it? Then I'll have tried mercy first. Gordon's smile faded. What comes after won't be mercy. Chambers studied him for a long moment. Be careful, Gordon. Marie Gutierrez is a snake, but snakes bite when cornered. Then I'll make sure she never sees me coming. The custody hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the family court wing of Baltimore's Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Courthouse. Gordon arrived early with Brian Nicholson, the attorney Chambers had recommended. Nicholson was in his early 50s, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of a man who'd seen every trick in the family law playbook and still believed in justice. Remember, Nicholson said as they walked through security. This is just the emergency hearing. The judge will hear arguments, review preliminary evidence, and make a temporary determination. The full custody trial won't happen for months. I just need temporary custody for now, Gordon replied. Time to work. And you're sure your wife will break? I'm sure she'll be given the choice to. They entered the courtroom, a space designed to handle domestic conflicts with minimal drama, soft lighting, comfortable seating, a female judge known for her no-nonsense approach to child welfare. Judge Lily Lane, according to Nicholson, was fair but fierce, with a particular hatred for parental manipulation. Shannon and Marie sat on the opposite side with Daisy Flowers, an elegant woman in her 40s wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an expression of professional sympathy. Shannon looked exhausted, her eyes hollow, her hands trembling slightly. Marie sat ramrod straight, whispering constantly in her daughter's ear. When Shannon's eyes met Gordon's across the courtroom, something passed between them, something that made Marie's hand clamp down on Shannon's arm, hard enough that Shannon winced. Gordon cataloged it all. Judge Lane entered, and the room rose. She was a black woman in her 60s with gray braids coiled elegantly on her head and eyes that missed nothing. Be seated. This is the emergency custody hearing in the matter of Thomas Metcalf, minor child. Judge Lane adjusted her glasses, reviewing the file before her. I've read the CPS report, the hospital documentation, and the preliminary police investigation. Mr. Nicholson, you're representing Gordon Metcalf? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Flowers, you're representing Shannon Metcalf? I am, Your Honor. And I'd like to note that Marie Gutierrez is here today as well, though she's not technically a party to this custody dispute. Actually, came a voice from the back of the courtroom, Mrs. Gutierrez is very much a party to this proceeding. Everyone turned. A woman in her early 30s entered, carrying a briefcase and wearing the unmistakable bearing of a prosecutor. Renee Potts, State's Attorney's Office. Your Honor, we're filing formal charges against Marie Gutierrez for aggravated child abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and false reporting. We're also notifying the court that Shannon Metcalf is under active investigation. The courtroom exploded. Daisy Flowers was on her feet immediately. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. It's highly necessary. Potts interrupted. Given the ongoing criminal investigation, the state requests this custody hearing be postponed until. Denied, Judge Lane said crisply. The welfare of the child takes precedence. Ms. Potts, you can file your charges, but this hearing addresses Tommy Metcalf's immediate safety. That's my jurisdiction. She turned to Flowers. Ms. Flowers, your client is under investigation for allowing child abuse. Do you really want to argue she should have custody? Daisy Flowers was too smart to fall into that trap. Your Honor, my client maintains she had no knowledge of any abuse. She arrived home to find her son in distress and immediately called for help. She's a victim of her mother's manipulation. Then she'll testify to that effect, Judge Lane said. Mrs. Metcalf, please stand. Shannon rose shakily, Marie's hand still gripping her arm until Judge Lane's sharp look made Marie release her. Mrs. Metcalf, did you witness your mother assault your son? The courtroom fell silent. Shannon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marie's eyes bored into her daughter, a lifetime of control and manipulation concentrated in that stare. Gordon stood. Your Honor, may I approach? Judge Lane frowned. Mr. Metcalf, you're not an attorney. I know, but I have something Mrs. Metcalf needs to see. Something that might help her answer honestly. After a moment's consideration, Judge Lane nodded. Approach. Gordon walked to Shannon, aware of every eye in the courtroom. He pulled out his phone, queued up a video, and handed it to her without a word. Shannon looked down at the screen. Gordon had spent half the night compiling it, footage from their life together. Their wedding day, Shannon's vows promising to love and protect their family. Tommy's birth, Shannon crying with joy as she held him for the first time. Tommy's first steps, Shannon cheering. 100 small moments of genuine love, genuine connection, before Marie's poison had taken full hold. And then, at the end, Tommy in his hospital bed, the camera focused on his face as Dr. McCarthy asked him gentle questions. Can you tell me what happened, Tommy? Grandma said I was bad. She said Dad didn't really love me because he was always gone. Mom said it was true. Did Grandma hurt you before? A long pause. Then, so quietly, she pinched me. A lot. When Mom wasn't looking. And she locked me in the closet when I was bad. Said monsters would get me if I told. When did this start? I don't know. A long time ago. I thought it was normal. I thought all grandmas did that. Shannon's face crumpled as she watched. Her hands shook so badly the phone nearly fell. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Real tears, the kind that came from a mother's breaking heart. Shannon, Gordon said quietly, only loud enough for her to hear. You have one chance to be the mother Tommy needs. One chance to break free. I know you're scared. I know she's controlled you your whole life. But our son is in a hospital bed, traumatized and terrified, because you were too afraid to stop her. He paused. Be brave now. For him. Choose him. Marie was on her feet. Your Honor, this is manipulation. Sit down, Mrs. Gutierrez, Judge Lane snapped. Mrs. Metcalf, answer my question. Did you witness your mother assault your son? Shannon looked at Gordon, then at her mother, then at the judge. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, but it was clear. Yes. The courtroom erupted again. Daisy Flowers immediately requested a sidebar. Marie's face went purple with rage. Renee Potts pulled out handcuffs. But Gordon only watched Shannon, who had collapsed into her chair, sobbing. The weight of her mother's control finally shattered. Judge Lane gavelled for order. Mrs. Metcalf, I'm granting temporary full custody to Gordon Metcalf. You will have supervised visitation rights pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Mrs. Gutierrez, you are hereby ordered to have no contact with the minor child. She nodded to Potts. Counselor, she's all yours. As officers moved to arrest Marie, she lunged toward Shannon. You ungrateful, weak. After everything I've done for you, I saved you from poverty, from mediocrity. That money was supposed to be ours. And there it was, on the record, in front of a judge in a courtroom full of witnesses. The admission of motive, of conspiracy, of everything Gordon had suspected. Marie was still screaming as they led her away. Shannon sat motionless, tears streaming down her face, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. Gordon felt no satisfaction, not yet. This was just the first move. The real work was still ahead. Outside the courtroom, Renee Potts pulled him aside. That video was smart, using it to break Shannon without technically introducing evidence. I needed her to tell the truth. For Tommy's sake. And your own case, Potts noted. With Shannon's testimony and the physical evidence, Marie Gutierrez is looking at serious prison time. But Gordon, she lowered her voice. Shannon's attorney is going to push for a deal. Testify against her mother in exchange for reduced charges, maybe probation. Are you okay with that? Gordon thought about Shannon, the woman she'd been, the woman she'd become, the woman she might still be underneath the damage. If she fully cooperates, if she helps Tommy heal, if she breaks free of her mother completely, then yes, I want her to have that chance. Tommy deserves a mother who can love him without conditions. Potts studied him. You're a better man than most would be. I'm a father, Gordon corrected. Everything else is secondary. He left the courthouse and drove straight to Hopkins, where Tommy was being moved to a regular pediatric room, his condition stable. The boy was awake, drawing pictures with crayons a nurse had brought. Dad, Tommy's face lit up, then immediately fell. Is Grandma coming back? Gordon sat on the edge of the bed, taking his son's small hand. No, buddy. Grandma is never coming near you again. I promise. What about Mom? Your mom made some bad choices, but she's going to work very hard to be better. You'll see her, but only when you want to, and only with other people around to make sure you're safe. Tommy was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. About the closet and the pinching and everything. Grandma said you'd be mad at me. Gordon's heart broke and hardened simultaneously. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing that happened was your fault. Do you understand me? Adults are supposed to protect kids, not hurt them. When adults fail at that, it's their failure, not yours. Tommy nodded, but Gordon could see the doubt in his eyes, the damage that would take years to undo. We're going to get you help, Gordon continued. Dr. McCarthy is really nice, and she's going to help you understand that none of this is on you. And I'm going to be here every single step of the way, even when you have to go to those places for work. The dangerous places? Gordon had already made that decision, had already drafted his resignation letter to the State Department. I'm done with that job, Tommy. From now on, the only dangerous place I'm going is the grocery store when they're out of your favorite cereal. Tommy smiled, small but genuine. Dad, that's not funny. No? I thought it was pretty good. Gordon squeezed his son's hand. Get some rest, buddy. Tomorrow we're starting our new life. Just you and me. After Tommy fell asleep, Gordon stepped into the hallway and made a call. Brian, it's Gordon. I need you to draft something for me. A custody arrangement that gives Shannon a path back if she does the work. Therapy, testimony, complete separation from her mother. But it has to be ironclad. Tommy's safety is non-negotiable. Understood. I'll have it by morning. Gordon's next call was to the head of the security team watching Tommy. Any visitors attempt to get up here? 1. Woman matching Marie Gutierrez's description. Hospital security turned her away. She made some threats about lawyers, but she left. Keep the detail active for another week. Marie's going to be out on bail soon, and desperate people make stupid choices. His final call was to Raphael Chambers. The hearing went well? Better than I hoped. Shannon broke. Marie revealed her motive on record. Potts has everything she needs for prosecution. Good. But Gordon? Be careful. Marie's facing serious time. She's got nothing left to lose. I'm counting on it, Gordon said, and hung up. He returned to Tommy's room, settling into the chair beside his son's bed for another night of watching over him. Outside, Baltimore moved through its evening rhythms, indifferent to the small battles fought in courtrooms and hospital rooms. But Gordon wasn't done fighting. Marie was arrested, but not defeated. Shannon was cooperating, but not healed. And Tommy had a long road ahead, one that would require more than just Gordon's protection. It would require justice. Real justice. The kind that didn't just punish wrongdoing, but ensured it could never happen again. Gordon pulled out his laptop and began to write. Not a legal brief or a police statement, but a different kind of document entirely. A comprehensive dossier on Marie Gutierrez. Every case she'd handled, every client she'd manipulated, every life she'd destroyed in her pursuit of control and money. Because if Gordon had learned anything in his 12 years of crisis negotiation, it was this. The best way to defeat an enemy wasn't to destroy them directly. It was to ensure they destroyed themselves, thoroughly and publicly, so that everyone could see exactly what they were. Marie Gutierrez wanted to play games with his family. Gordon was about to show her what happened when you sat down at a table with someone who'd spent his career learning how to win games against terrorists and warlords. The difference was, Gordon played for keeps. Marie Gutierrez made bail within 48 hours, courtesy of a bond posted by one of her few remaining attorney colleagues. She walked out of central booking into a Baltimore morning sharp with January cold, her face composed, but her eyes burning with rage. Gordon knew this because he'd arranged to be notified the moment it happened. He also knew, thanks to Raphael Chambers' discreet monitoring, exactly where Marie went first. A small cafe 3 blocks from the courthouse, where she met with Daisy Flowers and another woman Gordon didn't immediately recognize. The photos Chambers' detective sent were clear enough. The 3 women huddled over coffee, Marie gesturing sharply, Flowers taking notes, the third woman nodding along. Gordon ran the third woman's face through a reverse image search and found her quickly enough. Stephanie Valencia, a private investigator with a reputation for finding dirt on opposing parties in custody cases. Not always through legal means. Gordon forwarded the photos to Renee Potts with a simple message. Conspiracy continuing. Might want to monitor. His phone rang within minutes. Gordon, you're not conducting your own investigation, are you? I'm protecting my son. If that happens to generate evidence of ongoing criminal activity, I'm duty-bound to report it. Potts sighed. You're walking a line. I've walked thinner ones in Baghdad. How's Shannon? Cooperating fully. She's given us detailed statements about Marie's planning, the emails, everything. Her attorney is pushing for an immunity deal in exchange for testimony. And the charges against her? Child endangerment, failure to protect. With her cooperation, we're willing to drop it to probation, mandatory therapy, supervised visitation with Tommy pending his psychologist's approval. Potts paused. She seems genuinely remorseful, Gordon. Broken, but genuine. Good. When can I see her? You want to see her? Potts sounded surprised. She's still Tommy's mother. And if she's really breaking free from Marie's control, she'll need support to stay free. Otherwise, Marie will just manipulate her all over again. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon, in a conference room at the state's attorney's office with Potts and Shannon's attorney present. Shannon looked diminished, her normally perfect appearance replaced with tangled hair and eyes swollen from crying. "Gordon," she said when he entered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Gordon sat across from her, studying the woman he'd married. "Tell me why." Shannon flinched but didn't look away. "I was scared. My whole life, I've been scared of my mother. She's always been this force. Overwhelming. When I was young, I thought all mothers were like that, controlling, critical, always watching. But it got worse after Dad died." "When was that?" "I was 16. After he was gone, it was just Mom and me. She said we had to stick together, that we only had each other. She controlled everything, where I went to college, what I studied, who I dated." Shannon's hands twisted in her lap. "When I met you, I thought I was finally free. You were strong, independent. I thought you'd protect me from her. But I wasn't home enough," Gordon said quietly. "No. And every time you left for another assignment, she was there, filling the space, filling my head with her voice. He doesn't really care about you. He's never here. You're raising Tommy alone. You deserve better. We deserve better." Shannon's voice broke, and I started to believe her. Or maybe I never stopped believing her, and you being there just let me pretend I didn't. "What about Tommy? When did the abuse start?" Shannon's face crumpled. "I don't know exactly. Little things at first. Mom would be too rough when she helped him, would yell at him for normal kid behavior. I'd tell her to stop, and she'd say I was too soft, that I was raising a weak child. Then you'd come home, and Tommy would be fine, and I'd think maybe I'd overreacted. But it got worse. 6 months ago, she started talking about your trust fund, about how we could finally have security, how Tommy could have the best schools, the best life. But only if we had full custody, only if you were out of the picture." Shannon looked up, tears streaming. "I said no at first. I did, Gordon. I told her it was crazy, that I wouldn't do that to you. What changed? She wore me down. Every day, every conversation. She'd show me articles about kids abandoned by their fathers, statistics about military and government workers who crack under pressure, suggestions that your job made you unstable. And then," Shannon's voice dropped to a whisper, "she said if I didn't help her, she'd make sure I lost everything. She'd tell the courts I was an unfit mother, that I'd been neglecting Tommy. She had evidence, photos she'd taken of our house when it was messy, recordings of me yelling when I was frustrated. She said she'd destroy me if I didn't cooperate." Gordon felt the familiar cold clarity settling over him. "So when she said she was going to hurt Tommy to frame me, you were too scared to stop her?" "I didn't know she was going to do it that day. I swear, Gordon. I knew she was planning something, but I thought we had time. I thought I could talk her out of it. And then Tuesday morning, she just showed up with those gloves and the coins and said today was the day. She locked me in our bedroom. I heard Tommy screaming. Shannon was sobbing now, barely able to speak. I tried to get out. I pounded on the door, but she's strong and I'm not. By the time I broke the lock, it was done. Tommy was choking, and Mom was already calling 911, already putting on her performance. And instead of telling the truth, you went along with her story. She said if I didn't, she'd kill herself and make it look like I did it. She said she'd leave notes blaming me for everything, that I'd lose Tommy and go to prison. I was so scared, Gordon. I know that's not an excuse. I know I failed our son, but I was so scared." Gordon sat back, processing. Daisy Flowers spoke up for the first time. "Mr. Metcalf, my client is fully prepared to testify against her mother. She's entering intensive therapy. She's severed all contact with Marie, and she's willing to accept whatever custody arrangement protects Tommy." "What does Tommy want?" Gordon asked. Flowers looked surprised. "He's 7 years old. He's 7 and traumatized, but he still has opinions. Dr. McCarthy has been talking with him." "What does he want?" Shannon answered, her voice small. "He wants to know if I still love him. He wants to know if I chose Mom over him." Fresh tears fell. "I did, didn't I? When it mattered most, I chose her." "No," Gordon said, and Shannon's eyes snapped to his. "You didn't choose. Choice implies agency. What you experienced was a lifetime of systematic psychological abuse and control. Marie groomed you from childhood to comply, to fear, to submit. What she did to you is as much abuse as what she did to Tommy, just slower and more insidious." Shannon stared at him. "You don't hate me? I hate what you did. I hate that you didn't protect our son when he needed you most. But hate." Gordon shook his head. "Shannon, I've negotiated with terrorists who strapped bombs to children. I've sat across from cartel bosses who murdered families for profit. You're not evil. You're damaged. And damage can be healed if you want it badly enough. I do, Shannon whispered. I want to be better. For Tommy, even if he never forgives me. Then here's what's going to happen, Gordon said. You're going to testify against your mother. You're going to give Potts everything she needs to put Marie away for the maximum sentence. You're going to continue therapy, and you're going to work with Dr. McCarthy to eventually have supervised sessions with Tommy at his pace when he's ready. And you? Us. There is no us, Shannon. Not romantically. That's over. But we're Tommy's parents, and if you do the work, real, hard, painful work to break free from Marie's programming, then maybe someday we can be effective co-parents. Maybe someday Tommy can have a mother he trusts again. Shannon nodded, wiping her eyes. That's more than I deserve. It's what Tommy deserves, Gordon corrected. Everything from now on is about what he deserves. After the meeting, Gordon found Renee Potts waiting in the hallway. That was generous of you. It was strategic, Gordon replied. Shannon's testimony will bury Marie. And keeping Shannon functional, recovering, means Tommy doesn't lose both parents. And what about Marie? You planning to testify at her trial? Absolutely. But that's not how I'm going to destroy her. Potts raised an eyebrow. Care to elaborate? Marie's entire identity is built on her reputation as a fierce attorney, a protective mother, a pillar of her community. She manipulates people by presenting herself as morally superior, as someone who knows better. Gordon pulled out his phone, showing Potts the dossier he'd been compiling. I'm going to systematically dismantle that reputation by exposing every case she's ever manipulated, every client she's ever used, every life she's ever destroyed. That sounds like a vendetta. It's accountability. Marie didn't just hurt my family. She's been doing this for decades, hiding behind her law license and her charm. How many other families has she destroyed? How many kids has she traumatized? Gordon's voice hardened. I'm going to find them all. I'm going to help them come forward. And I'm going to make sure Marie Gutierrez's name becomes synonymous with exactly what she is, a predator who weaponizes the legal system to abuse children. Potts was quiet for a moment. That's going to take resources, time, investigation. I have all three. I've already resigned from the State Department. My only job now is being Tommy's father and making sure Marie can never hurt another child. And if some of what you find isn't admissible in court, if it's hearsay or too old to prosecute, Gordon smiled grimly. Then I'll make sure it's public anyway. Court of law versus court of public opinion. Marie's about to face both. Over the next 3 weeks, Gordon became a man on a mission. He hired investigators, contacted former clients of Marie's law firm, tracked down families from cases she'd handled. What he found was even worse than he'd imagined. 15 former clients came forward with stories of Marie's manipulation. 7 described situations where she'd coached children to lie about abuse. For documented cases where she'd manufactured evidence. 2 families had photos of injuries their children sustained while in Marie's care during supervised visits. Injuries Marie had then blamed on the other parent. Gordon compiled it all into a comprehensive report, working with a team of investigative journalists who'd been looking into family court corruption. The story broke in the Baltimore Sun on a Wednesday morning, front page, with a headline that made Gordon smile despite the grim subject matter. Predator in a power suit. How one attorney weaponized child custody cases. The article detailed Marie's decades-long pattern of abuse, manipulation, and fraud. It included Shannon's testimony, testimonies from other victims, and expert analysis from child psychologists and legal ethics professionals. By noon, it had gone viral. By evening, Marie's former law firm had released a statement condemning her actions and announcing a full internal review of her past cases. Raphael Chambers called Gordon that night. Have you seen the news? I helped write it. Marie's attorney is screaming about prejudicing the jury pool. The trial's not for 6 months. Plenty of time for things to settle down. Besides, everything in that article is factual and sourced. Marie can sue the newspaper if she wants to claim defamation. She probably will. Let her try? Discovery in a defamation case would give us access to even more of her records. Gordon was at Tommy's bedside. The boy had been released from the hospital, but was staying in a secure apartment Gordon had rented under an assumed name, with round-the-clock security. How's she handling it? About as well as you'd expect. Her bail was revoked after she tried to contact Shannon. She's back in custody, and her attorney is pushing for a psychiatric evaluation. Good. Let them evaluate her. Let the world see exactly what she is. Tommy stirred in his sleep, and Gordon lowered his voice. Raphael, I need one more favor. Name it. Eleanor Gutierrez. Marie's mother. The pattern didn't start with Marie. She learned it from someone. I need to know everything about Eleanor's past. Court cases, complaints, anything. Eleanor died 5 years ago. I know. But her records don't die. And if the pattern goes back another generation, I want to document it. I want Tommy to understand, someday, that this wasn't about him. This was about broken people perpetuating a cycle of abuse because no one stopped them. Chambers was quiet. You're not just seeking justice for Tommy. You're trying to burn down the entire system that allowed this to happen. The system failed my son, Gordon said simply. If I can make even one part of it better, if I can prevent one other family from going through this, then yes. I'm going to burn down whatever needs burning. 2 days later, a package arrived at Gordon's apartment. Inside was a thick file, Eleanor Gutierrez's complete history, courtesy of Raphael Chambers' thorough investigation. Eleanor had been even worse than Marie. A social worker in the 1970s and 80s, she'd been fired from 3 different agencies for inappropriate conduct with clients. The details were chilling, coaching abuse victims to embellish their stories, creating dependencies with vulnerable families, using her position to control and manipulate. She'd eventually lost her license, but had continued to operate in the shadows, consulting on custody cases, training her daughter in her methods. Gordon added it to his dossier, building a complete picture of 3 generations of abuse. Eleanor, who'd pioneered the tactics, Marie, who'd refined them, and Shannon, who'd been trained from birth to be the next link in the chain, until Gordon and Tommy had disrupted the cycle. The trial for Marie Gutierrez began in late February, 6 weeks after Tommy's hospitalization. Gordon sat in the gallery every day, watching as Renee Potts methodically destroyed Marie's defense. Shannon testified for 3 days, detailing her mother's manipulation, the planning, the assault on Tommy. Medical experts testified about Tommy's injuries. Police presented the emails, the evidence, the timeline that proved premeditation. Marie's attorney, a desperate man named Marco McKinney who'd taken the case for the publicity, tried every tactic, claiming Shannon was lying, suggesting Gordon had manufactured evidence, even attempting to paint Marie as a concerned grandmother worried about her grandson's safety. But with each attempt, Potts countered with documentation, witnesses, and Marie's own words from the courthouse. The turning point came when Tommy himself testified. Judge Lane had allowed it over strenuous objection from the defense, with Dr. McCarthy present and special accommodations made for Tommy's age and trauma. Gordon sat in the front row as his son, small and brave in his best clothes, took the stand. Tommy, Potts said gently, can you tell the jury what your grandmother did to you? Tommy looked at Gordon, who nodded encouragement. Then Tommy looked at Marie, who stared at him with undisguised hatred, and something changed in his eyes, fear transforming to anger. She hurt me, Tommy said, his young voice clear in the silent courtroom. She said I was bad. She put coins in my mouth and made me swallow them. She said if I told my dad, she'd make sure I never saw him again. Had she hurt you before? Yes. She pinched me where people couldn't see. She locked me in the closet. She said monsters would eat me if I was bad. Tommy's hands clenched. She lied. There are no monsters in closets. The only monster was her. The jury's faces showed everything: horror, anger, sympathy. When Tommy finished testifying, not a single person in that courtroom doubted the truth. Marie was convicted on all counts: aggravated child abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, false reporting, and attempted obstruction of justice. At sentencing, Judge Lane looked at Marie with cold contempt. Mrs. Gutierrez, in my 30 years on the bench, I have never encountered someone who so thoroughly weaponized their position of trust to harm children. You didn't just abuse your grandson. You attempted to destroy his family, manipulate the legal system, and when caught, showed no remorse. This court sentences you to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Marie's scream of outrage echoed through the courtroom. This is a travesty. That man poisoned my daughter against me. He manipulated everyone. I was protecting my family. You were protecting your bank account, Judge Lane snapped. Guards, remove her. As Marie was led away, still screaming, Gordon felt Tommy's small hand slip into his. His son looked up at him, tears streaming down his face, but smiling. "Is it over, Dad?" "It's over, buddy. She can't hurt you anymore." But it wasn't quite over. Gordon had one final move to make. 3 months after Marie's conviction, Gordon stood in the lobby of a newly established nonprofit organization. The sign above the door read, "The Eleanor Project, Protecting Children from Family Court Abuse." Inside, a team of attorneys, investigators, and child psychologists worked to identify and support families who'd been victimized by corrupt custody practices. The organization was funded by a significant portion of Gordon's inheritance, the same money Marie had tried to steal. It felt appropriate, using Marie's greed to create something that would prevent others like her from succeeding. Raphael Chambers joined him for the opening reception. "Hell of a thing you've built here." "It's what Tommy's case exposed," Gordon replied. "How easy it is for abusers to manipulate the system when they understand it well enough. We've already identified 12 other cases with patterns similar to Marie's. 12 families who need help. And Shannon." Gordon glanced across the room where Shannon stood, speaking quietly with one of the organization's child psychologists. She'd completed her mandated therapy, testified at Marie's trial, and spent the last 3 months working to become someone Tommy could trust again. The progress was slow, but real. "She volunteers here twice a week," Gordon said. "Helps other parents who've been manipulated by abusive family members recognize the patterns, break free. Says if she can prevent one person from failing their child the way she did, it might help her live with what she's done." "You've forgiven her?" "I've accepted what happened and moved forward. For Tommy's sake." Gordon paused. "She sees him twice a week now, supervised. Dr. McCarthy says he's doing well, building trust slowly. Shannon will never be the mother she was before Marie destroyed her, but she's working to be a different kind of mother, honest, aware, humble. Tommy deserves that effort." The reception continued around them, survivors and supporters mingling, sharing stories. Tommy was there too, playing with other children in a supervised room, his laughter audible through the walls. He was in therapy, still healing, but the nightmares were less frequent now. He smiled more. He felt safe. Dr. Angie McCarthy approached, a glass of wine in hand. "Gordon, this is remarkable. The work you've done, the lives you'll change, it matters." "It's what should have existed before," Gordon replied. "Maybe if it had, Marie would have been stopped decades ago. Maybe. But you can't change the past, only the future." McCarthy smiled. "And speaking of the future, have you thought about what you'll do? You can't run this organization and be a full-time father forever." "Why not? I've got good people managing the day-to-day operations. I consult, I fundraise, I use my connections from the State Department to expose corruption. And the rest of the time, I'm with Tommy. It's exactly what I want to be doing." Renee Potts joined their circle. "Heard from the State Bar Association today. They're opening investigations into 15 attorneys who worked cases with Marie, looking into whether they knew about her methods. Your work is rippling out, Gordon. Good. Every attorney who looked away while Marie abused children should answer for it." As the evening wound down, Gordon found himself on the building's roof deck, looking out over Baltimore's skyline. The city lights sparkled in the darkness, each one representing lives being lived, families navigating their own struggles. Tommy's voice came from behind him. "Dad, can we go home?" Gordon turned, smiling at his son. "Yeah, buddy. Let's go home." In the car, Tommy was quiet for a while before speaking. "Dad, why did Grandma do those things? Dr. McCarthy says it's not my fault, but I don't understand why she wanted to hurt me." Gordon had been dreading this question, but he'd prepared for it. Some people are broken inside in ways that make them hurt others. Grandma learned how to be cruel from her mother, and she never chose to be better. She chose power and money over love and kindness. But Mom chose to be better. She was broken too, but she's trying now. That's right. Your mom made terrible mistakes, but she's working every day to fix them. That's the difference. Grandma never thought she needed fixing. She thought everyone else was wrong. Is that why you made the Eleanor Project? To fix people? Not exactly. We can't fix everyone, Tommy. But we can help protect kids from people who won't fix themselves. And we can help parents who want to be better actually become better. Tommy nodded, processing this with the seriousness of a child who'd grown up too fast. I want to help too, when I'm older. You don't have to. I want to, Tommy insisted. "I want other kids to know it's not their fault, that they can be okay again." Gordon's throat tightened. "Then when you're ready, we'll find a way for you to help. But right now, your only job is to be a kid. Deal?" "Deal." At home, Gordon tucked Tommy into bed, checking the security system out of habit even though Marie was in prison and Shannon posed no threat. Some instincts died hard. "Dad," Tommy said as Gordon was leaving, "I'm glad you believed me, that you saw what I wrote on my gown. I'll always believe you, Tommy. Always. Even when I'm grown up. Especially then." After Tommy fell asleep, Gordon sat in his home office, reviewing applications from families seeking the Eleanor Project's help. Each story was heartbreaking, each situation complex. But the work mattered, and Gordon had learned that the best revenge against people like Marie wasn't violence or cruelty. It was building something they could never destroy, helping people they could never hurt, creating a legacy that would outlast their damage. Marie Gutierrez would spend the next 15 years minimum behind bars, her reputation destroyed, her name synonymous with child abuse and legal corruption. Shannon was rebuilding herself slowly, earning back trust one painful day at a time. And Tommy was healing, surrounded by people who loved him, protected by systems that had failed him once but wouldn't fail him again. Gordon's phone buzzed with a message from Raphael Chambers. "The media is calling you a hero. How does it feel?" Gordon typed back, "I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who refused to let them win." He looked at the photo on his desk, Tommy laughing, truly laughing, taken just last week at the park. That was victory. Not the convictions, or the organization, or the media attention, but that laugh. The proof that his son could still find joy after everything he'd endured. Gordon Metcalf had spent 12 years negotiating with some of the world's most dangerous people, learning how to manipulate situations, how to win against impossible odds. He'd used every skill he'd acquired to protect his son and deliver justice against the people who'd hurt him. But the greatest victory wasn't the battle he'd won. It was the peace he'd secured, for Tommy, for other children, for families who deserved better than the system had given them. Marie had made a grave mistake the day she touched his son. She'd gambled that Gordon would be easy to frame, easy to remove, easy to destroy. She'd forgotten that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who fights with violence or rage. It's the one who fights with intelligence, patience, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Gordon had shown her that lesson thoroughly, and in the process, he'd ensured she'd never teach her brand of cruelty to another generation. The cycle was broken. The monsters were caged. And Gordon Metcalf could finally sleep at night, knowing his son was safe, knowing he'd done everything a father should do. The war was over, and this time, the good guys had won. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.